Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. Brother Yun, you know medical arts as well. Yun Xiao said in astonishment. Once again, Yun Qinghong seriously sized up Yun Che. With his 100 years of experience, he should have been able to easily see through the truths and lies of a youth, and, from Yun Che's expression, what he saw was actually seriousness, sincerity, and even a hint of urgency. This was incomprehensible to him. When facing such extremely irregular circumstances, his initial reaction should have been to silently raise his guard. However, unknowingly, even though it was clearly the first time he had met this youth who was filled with mysteries, no matter what he did, he was actually unable to raise his guard nor feel averse. Instead, he felt a form of indescribable trust and intimacy towards him. In his entire lifetime, this was still the first time he had ever experienced this sort of strange feeling. He looked at Yun Che for a long while, and his heart was strangely throbbing. However, he was completely unable to discern the source of this throbbing. He lightly smiled, and said, "Little brother Yun is so young, yet already has such accomplishments. I believe your medical skills are definitely extraordinary as well. It's just... My body is not suffering from an average illness, but an old sickness that had worsened throughout the years. Back then, I sought all the famous doctors in the world, yet none of them could do anything. Now that 20-odd years have passed, it has long seeped deeply into my blood marrows. I'm afraid that even if the great shifting golden deity himself descends into the world, there would be nothing he could do either. You having such sincerity already makes me exceptionally grateful. It's best that you don't waste your efforts." Yun Che, however, was unmoved, as he slowly and calmly said. This junior does not agree with Senior Yun's words. When this junior first began practicing medicine, my master has taught me before that, in this world, everything mutually reinforces and neutralizes each other. The countless matters of this world are constantly in a cycle of cause and effect. If a perfectly healthy person can become sick, then there's definitely a way to treat a sick person back to perfect health. In this world, there definitely doesn't exist any true terminal illness and injuries which cannot be healed. Even if it cannot be treated, that would simply mean that the treatment method has not been found for the time being. This junior's teacher is the world's greatest medical saint, and this junior's medical skills all come from my teacher. Under my teacher's tutelage, ever since this junior was young, I have never believed that an incurable illness exists in this world. So, I hope Senior Yun will give this junior a try." Yun Qinghong had made contact with countless famous doctors, yet, he had never heard such words from a confident and prideful doctor, to the point where he was unable to refute a single word. And, these words, had even been spoken by a youth who was merely a little over 20 years old. Yun Xiao's mouth was wide open. Suddenly, he recalled the mysterious profound energy he received from Yun Che. He was severely injured, and in an instant, he said excitedly, "Father! Let brother Yun try it out. Earlier, I was injured by those 3 black-clothed men. Even though my injuries weren't very severe, they were still a little heavy. And, brother Yun simply used a very short span of time to completely stabilize my injuries, to the point where I'm seemingly unable to feel any pain. It might be possible that brother Yun has a way to treat father's body as well." Since the two had already put it that way, Yun Qinghong naturally couldn't refuse again. With a light smile, he said, "Fine then. But, do not strain yourself. In regards to the condition of my body, I myself know best." Yun Che did not speak further, as he took 2 steps forward. Standing in front of Yun Qinghong's body, he then stretched out his left hand. "Senior Yun, first allow this junior to inspect the condition of your body using my profound energy. Please do not resist it." Yun Qinghong gently nodded, and then, he slightly adjusted his sitting posture. His expression was very calm, and calmness signified that he was not holding onto any hope. After all, just as he had said, in regards to the condition of his body, he himself was more clear than anyone else. 20-odd years ago, not a single one out of all of the famous doctors in the world could heal him. Now that the illness had settled for 20-odd years, even more so, the possibility of healing it could no longer exist. Yunche reached out his palm, and carefully pressed at the place where Yun Qinghong's heart was on chest, and then closed his eyes. Profound energy gently and slowly entered his body. At the side, Yun Xiao retreated a few steps back, and his two hands were tightly clutching onto his own chest. He wasn't as calm as Yun Qinghong. Instead, he was incomparably wishing for the appearance of a miracle. In merely a second, Yun Che's brows furrowed fiercely. This reaction caused Yun Xiao's heart to skip a beat as well. From Yun Qinghong's complexion and superficial aura, he knew that the condition of his body was definitely extremely poor. And only after the inspection did he shockingly realize that Yun Qinghong's condition was much poorer than he had predicted. His internal organs were all failing to a large extent. It was seemingly impossible to find a complete internal organ. His heart, lungs, and profound veins, every single one of them was carved with scars which looked as though they were slashed by a sharp sword. And when an expert's internal organs were damaged, as long as sufficient time was given, they could be recovered with their own profound energy. However, these sword scars still existed even after 20-odd years. Evidently, the source of these internal injuries was definitely not ordinary, most likely caused by an extremely strong sword energy. Sword energy? Mighty heavenly sword region? The most frightening part wasn't his internal injuries, but the failures of more than 90% of his tendons. They were failures, not torn apart. Even if all the tendons in a person's body were to be completely torn apart, Yunche would still have a way to reconnect and fix them. However, a failure like this was even more terrifying than tears. If a regular person's tendons were to be compared to the roots of life, then more than 90% of Yun Qinghong's tendons had basically wilted. Seemingly, the existence of not even a hint of vitality could be sensed. Similarly, his profound veins had failed as well. The damage received by his profound veins were not heavy, however, like a dried-up quagmire, they were devoid of life. It could be seen just to what extent he had overused his own profound energy and stamina back then to be able to cause his profound veins and tendons to fail to such a state. Recalling Xiao Lai's simple description back then, 22 years ago, when they fled to Floating Cloud City, their entire bodies had already been covered with injuries, and they were nearly burnt out. And after that, it was unknown just how long, and how dangerous of an escape they had experienced. Perhaps, from that moment on, their consumption at every second were all complete overusage of their energy. With such overuse of their strength, how would they still have the mental capability to care about their injuries? In their escape that made use of all of their strength and willpower, their injuries had undoubtedly worsened with every step. And for them to persist to such an extent was most probably because of that child in their embrace back then. If they were merely the failures of his profound veins and tendons, and the worsening of his internal injuries, after recuperating for more than 20 years, even if Yun Qinghong was unable to restore his profound energy, they shouldn't be able to extinguish his flames of life to such extent. Very quickly, Yun Che found the answer. In Yun Qinghong's body, he discovered something that had already invaded every corner of his body. Cold poison. And the reason why he was frowning so heavily was precisely because of what type of cold poison it was. Because this cold poison was exactly the same as the cold poison Yu Xiaoya, Hua Minghai's wife, had suffered from. Back then, bringing along Yu Xiaoya, whose body had already been struck with the cold poison, Hua Minghai had stolen a large number of purple-veined heaven crystals to extend her life, and had even constantly searched for various mysterious medicines, yet he was only able to maintain a short few years of her lifespan. If he had not encountered Yun Che, Yu Xiaoya would have already passed away a year ago. While the cold poison in Yun Qinghong's body had existed for more than 20 years. This cold poison had long completely invaded his blood veins, bone marrows, and even his vitals. Compared to Xiaoya's condition, it was countless times more dangerous. Hua Minghai had once said that Yu Xiaoya's cold poison was cast by the Sun Moon Divine Hall's deadly hands. Could it be that those villains back then were not just the mighty heavenly sword region, but the Sun Moon Divine Hall as well? After a long while, Yun Che slowly shifted away his palm from Yun Qinghong's chest. His pair of brows were kept tightly furrowed, not loosening in the slightest, and even his expression was a little heavy. With an anxious expression that was filled with expectations, Yun Xiao looked at him. However, even after waiting for a long while, Yun Che still did not speak up. Finally unable to bear it any longer, he voiced out. Brother Yun, my father's body, how is it? Yun Che did not reply immediately. Instead, he lightly exhaled, before speaking up. Senior Yun's profound level back then must have been at the very pinnacle. If it was an average person, forget about living till now, I'm afraid that the person wouldn't even live past 3 years. I once heard from my mother that father's accomplishments back then could be said to have shocked the entire illusory demon realm. At just the age of 36, he had already broken through to become a monarch, and he was the absolutely youngest monarch in all of illusory demon realm's history. Adding the power of his profound handle, before father encountered this incident in the entire illusory realm, among the people of the same age, not a single one of them was father's match. Back then, although grandfather and the 10 great-grand elders were no longer in the family, and the family was even shouldering a grave sin with father's presence, no one dared to belittle our Yun family. Yun Xiao slowly explained. When he brought up Yun Qinghong's glory back in the days, he wasn't proud, but simply anguished. Then, when father had successfully broken through to the middle stages of the sovereign profound realm, he was no longer able to suppress his worry for grandfather. Along with mother who had just broken through to the sovereign profound realm, they used the family's secret device to enter the sky profound continent. But, in the end, 36 years old. Monarch. To Yun Che, the realm of the sovereign profound was simply too distant, and that's exactly why the concept of a 36-year-old stepping into the sovereign profound realm had struck an incomparably immense blow to his heart and soul. He was the youngest monarch in all of illusory demon realm's history, and most probably, even in the sky profound continent, there still wouldn't be anyone that could break this record. If he had not encountered such a disaster, his future heights would have been unforeseeable. However, the heavens just had to be envious of geniuses, causing such a catastrophe to befall upon him. He was once a monarch, and was even a middle-stage monarch. His wife was similarly a monarch as well, the realm at the very pinnacle, which even until now, he could only desperately look up to with his head raised. The two of them were actually so incredible, standing at a height which common people could only look up to. Ho, there's no point in bringing up matters of the past. Fate is determined by the heavens. No matter how strong a person is, it's destined that he can never win against the heavens. And since such is fate, then the only choice is to calmly accept fate. It's been more than 20 years, and I have long gotten used to it. Yun Qinghong's voice was calm and gentle, and his every word was casual and light. His expression was even calmer, as though he had long accepted everything and resigned to his fate. However, from a single glance, Yun Che could see that, within his calm eyes, he was concealing a deep grievance. His words sounded as though he was calm and had resigned to his fate. However, what Yun Che heard even more was instead anger and unwillingness. That's right. No matter how open-minded a person was, how could he possibly accept such a cruel arrangement of fate? Brother Yun, my father's body, you can't do anything either. Yun Xiao asked a little dejectedly. From Yun Che's extremely heavy expression, he had actually obtained his answer. Yun Qinghong chuckled, and said, Little brother Yun, there's no need to put it to heart. Earlier, you should have seen the condition of my body as well. It definitely isn't because your medical skills are lacking, rather, it's because my body is indeed incurable. In actuality, this way is fine as well. At the very least, my life is much stable than before. Turning his head, he glanced outside the window, and lightly sighed. In another 2 months, it should be time for my identity as the patriarch to be transferred to someone else. When that time comes, I will be completely relaxed, and I will no longer have any worries. Even though he said that he would no longer have any worries, in the depths of his eyes, a deep pain and eagerness flickered. Oh? Transferring the title of patriarch to someone else? Yun Xiao was stunned. What's going on? When is this going to happen? Why? Why have I never heard about it? Was this decided by the great elders? Yun Qinghong shook his head, and lightly smiled. Xiao, do not mind it. I have sat on the position as the patriarch virtually for 100 years, it should have long been given to someone else. Although there hasn't been anyone who brought up about the matter of having me giving up the patriarch position, But, in 3 months, it will be Little Demon Empress's 100-year reign ceremony. During the grand ceremony, there would definitely be another battle between dragons and tigers of the 12 guardian families, and a big incident might even occur. Big incident? What big incident? Yun Xiao asked in shock. You will know when the time comes. Yun Qinghong's calm voice was filled with a deep helplessness. The glow in his eyes had slightly dimmed, however, it was still projecting out wisdom and farsightedness that could seemingly see through everything. But, with his weak constitution, even if he was able to see through everything, he was powerless to face it. He continued. In the 100-year ceremony, our Yun family will definitely have to face it with all we can as well. Otherwise, there's a possibility that we might face the crisis of being expelled from the 12 guardian families, and even from the Demon Imperial City. What? Yun Xiao gasped out in shock. In times like this, we, father and son, should best be abandoned. Yun Qinghong closed his eyes, his face was expressionless. In order to face the Little Demon Empress's 100-year reign ceremony, our Yun family will conduct a competition within the entire family in 2 months. During that time, it will also be the moment where I step down from my position. But Xiao, there's no need for you to worry. After all, your maternal grandfather is still here, so the Yun family will not dare to mistreat us. Even if we really have to leave, it's not like we have no place to go. To our family of 3, leaving the Yun family, which is currently a dusty land in a pile of mess, isn't really a bad thing. Yun Qinghong said many words which Yun Xiao was unprepared for. He could only stare dumbfoundedly. Furthermore, he did not hide this topic from Yun Che. And before this, he did not tell Yun Xiao even the slightest bit of this matter. Evidently, the matter of Yun Xiao and Number 7 under heaven being assaulted during their meeting had allowed him to clearly sniff out a certain odor. In 2 months, the competition within the Yun family. In 3 months, the Little Demon Empress's 100-year reign ceremony. Yun Che's chest slightly fluctuated, and following after, he gritted his teeth, as a strange clear glow flashed past his eyes. He looked at Yun Qinghong, and said with firm words, Senior Yun, if your body is able to fully recover within 2 months, and is able to even restore all of the profound energy that you once had, will you still consider stepping down from the patriarch position? Yun Che's sudden question stunned both Yun Qinghong and Yun Xiao at the same time. Yun Qinghong twitched his brows, and then said with a bitter smile, There's no if. The existence of a full recovery is basically impossible. Restoring the profound energy that I once had back then is even more of a myth. Disregard the possibility for now. Yun Che's tone did not change, as his eyes faced Yun Qinghong's in a straight line. Senior Yun simply has to answer this, Junior. If in 2 months, your body and strength returns to the ones Yun Qinghong had 25 years ago, then, will you still be willing to give up the patriarch position, even if the people within your family were to force you with harsh measures? Yun Qinghong looked firmly at Yun Che. In his eyes, he could see something that was causing his heart to fiercely tremble. He was silent for a short moment, and then he shook his head slowly, with incomparable decisiveness. No. This patriarch position has been passed down from generation to generation, from my great-grandfather, to my grandfather, and to my father. It is the identity and responsibility my father had bestowed upon me. If I were to give up this position to someone else, even if there comes a day I will buried under the yellow earth, I still wouldn't have the face to meet my father. And the crisis of the Yun family is similar to thousands of kilograms of weight being held on by a strand of hair. A few lowly thieves are even plotting something secretly in their hearts. If I had sufficient strength, I definitely won't be ignoring them with my eyes closed like I am right now. And only I am able to revive the Yun family. Yun Qinghong's final few words were no longer the least bit calm like usual. What appeared was a form of decisiveness and pride that was carved deep in his bones. Good, Yun Che slowly nodded. Senior Yun, if you're willing to believe and cooperate with me, I have a way to restore your body and your profound strength to their perfect state back then, in 2 months. Ah. Yun Che's words had undoubtedly thundered in Yun Qinghong's and Yun Xiao's ears. Yun Xiao especially had instantly cried out involuntarily. With quick steps, he charged over and uncontrollably grabbed hold of Yunche, as he said with incomparable excitement. "Brother Yun. Why you? Is what you said true? No matter if it's father's body or profound strength, do you really have a way to restore them all?" Yun Xiao was a little incoherent with his words due to excitement. However, this demonstrated that he seemed to believe Yunche's words. At the very least, he was filled with immense hope. As Yun Qinghong had been paralyzed for more than 20 years, if anyone else were to hear Yunche's words, they would simply feel that he was just making up stories. However, Yun Xiao had a strange form of indescribable trust towards Yunche. Even if his words were as inconceivable as such, Yun Xiao would still involuntarily wish to trust him. Yun Qinghong was dumbfounded. However, he naturally would not be as agitated as Yun Xiao. From Yunche's expression and his eyes, even with his lifetime worth of experience, he was unable to see a hint of false intent and pretense, but only resolution after a firm decision had been made. Facing such an expression, eyes, and tone, Yun Qinghong felt that his own suspicion had actually been shaken. Looking a little out of sorts, he stared at Yunche and said, "Little brother Yun, you really have a way." Yunche did not reply. Instead, he reached out his hand, and once again pressed it on Yun Qinghong's chest. Yun Qinghong's body had been crippled for more than 20 years, and he had long completely resigned to his fate, as even he himself had long lost any belief that there was a method which could restore his body in this world. Restoring his profound strength was even more of a dream that he did not dare to even think of. Hence, no matter how much he was guaranteed with mere words, it was impossible for him to really believe them. The only thing that could allow him to believe what Yunche had said was to have his own body experience the truth. Yunche closed his eyes. The great way of the Buddha began to circulate, and then, taking the absorbed nature energy with profound energy as a medium, he slowly and carefully inserted it into Yun Qinghong's body. Then, he carefully guided it to every corner of his body. The condition of Yun Qinghong's body was incomparably severe. If it was allowed to recuperate with mere medical skills and medicine, even if his body could recover, it would still take at least several years. And many of the spiritual herbs needed for this process were extremely rare and precious. There were even some that could not be bought with mere money. Yunche naturally would not choose the method of treating with medical skills and medicine. To have Yun Qinghong, who was crippled for more than 20 years, recover in a short span of 2 months, his only choice was to use the nature energy brought by the great way of the Buddha. His own body had suffered countless heavy injuries. There were even several times where his entire body was nearly destroyed and his organs were severely ruptured. However, as long as he still harbored a single breath and a hint of will, he would be able to use the great way of the Buddha to speedily recover. With his current 4th level of the great way of the Buddha and his dragon god's physique, no matter how heavy his injuries were, he would be able to completely recover in less than 48 hours, with not a single scar left behind. At the same time, under the power of heaven and earth, the recovery speed of his profound energy was 12 times faster than an average person. The nature energy brought upon by the great way of the Buddha could heal oneself, so naturally, it could heal others as well. Based on speed, it was much slower than healing himself. However, a month should be enough. After his body and profound veins were restored, there would still be a month worth of time which could be used to restore profound strength. However, though using nature energy to undergo treatment for others sounded especially simple, reality was definitely not the case. Yunche's body held affinity with nature energy. However, Yun Qinghong did not possess the great way of the Buddha. If the nature energy that entered his body went out of Yunche's control, it would turn into a completely destructive force. At the same time, the medical knowledge which Yunche possessed played a very important role in this process. He was familiar with the positions of every meridian, every acupuncture point, and even every muscle in the human body. Hence, the directions which the nature energy flowed under his control was vividly circulating in his mind. If it was someone else, even if he possessed the same 4th level of the great way of the Buddha like Yunche, it would be basically impossible for him to treat Yun Qinghong. In the beginning, Yun Qinghong felt a warm flow of energy surge from his chest that was in contact with Yunche's palm. Then, the warm flow of energy spread throughout his entire body. Its aura was extremely calm and was different from all the profound energy he had known about in his life, causing him to secretly feel astonished. Following after the constant surging of the calm aura, the warm flow of energy in his body became even denser, and the flowing began to slow down. At this moment, he felt the meridians of his limbs, which had been frozen for more than 20 years, suddenly warm up. And at the same time, his sternocostal, which had long become dormant, to the point where the dozens of veins that existed within it had almost been forgotten, experienced a piercing pain, as though it had been stabbed by a needle. At that one moment, Yun Qinghong's entire body stiffened, as his face revealed an expression of utter disbelief. Right after, his eyes stirred intensely, and his hands had even begun to tremble with incomparable intensity. Ever since Yun Xiao was consciously aware of his surroundings, the father he had known of had always been as calm as water and non-competitive. He had never seen his father being enraged, and had rarely seen him laugh out loud either, as though everything in the world was unable to stir the waves in his heart. He had lived for nearly 22 years, yet this was still the first time seeing his father losing control of his emotions like this all of a sudden. He worriedly said, "Father, what happened to you?" "My senses," Yun Qinghong's eyes stirred, and his entire body was still uncontrollably trembling in excitement. "A part of my veins have regained their senses." "Ah." Yun Qinghong's words to Yun Xiao were like a heavenly message that came from the boundaries of the sky. Seeing Yun Qinghong's body trembling in excitement, he was so joyous that it seemed as though he was about to collapse in tears right there and then. Is that true? Father, you really do not speak for now." Yun Qinghong forcefully suppressed his excitement. In front of him, Yun Che's eyes had been closed the entire time. His brows were knitted tightly, and his forehead was drenched in sweat. His current state showed that he was concentrating with all his might. Yun Xiao hurriedly reached out his hand to cover his own mouth. He looked at Yun Che, then looked at Yun Qinghong, and no longer let out the slightest sound. However, the stirring in his eyes had clearly showed the tumbling in his inner heart. However, the excitement in his heart was naturally unable to compare to Yun Qinghong's by a long margin. The warm flow of energy continued to swim in his body. After passing through his sternocostal, those dormant veins were sending out senses one after another, as though they were awakened by a long, deep slumber. As for these veins which were completely wilted, and wouldn't be exaggerated if they were deemed dead, he had initially thought that it would be impossible to restore them again forever. Those genius doctors whose names could shake the illusory demon realm had all told him that his meridians could never be restored. However, currently, he was clearly, and incomparably truly, sensing the existence of these veins once again. Among these wilted veins, even if only one of them could be restored, it would be sufficient for him to believe that it was an incredible miracle. However, what he was sensing was one vein after another being restored consecutively. The increasing painful sensations, that were either light or heavy, did not cause him to reject them in the slightest. Instead, they excited him, as though he was in a dream where he was stepping into the heavens. Initially, he was merely someone whose body had been completely crippled more than 20 years ago, who had long lost all hope and was even calmly waiting for his death. In order to not worry his wife and son, what he expressed had always been an adaptable, breeze-like calm, as though he was seeing light of everything. However, no one could understand that was merely a form of displaying an unfathomable degree of helplessness, pain, and despair. And no one could understand the degree of excitement and ecstasy he was currently feeling at this moment. Yun Che maintained the same unmoving posture, and only sweat was flowing in streams from his head. Very quickly, his clothes were completely drenched as well. Yun Qinghong looked at this male youth in front of him who bestowed him this heavenly surprise and boundless hope. An overwhelming surge of feelings fluctuated in his inner heart. This youth. Who is he? Naturally, senses being restored to his veins did not represent a complete recovery. To completely restore them, even with the profound great way of the Buddha, it would still require a considerably long time. What Yun Che was currently doing was to once again infuse these veins, which were initially completely wilted, back into the source of life. This was the first step he had to take in order to treat Yun Qinghong. Having senses being restored to a few of his veins was enough to excite Yun Qinghong to think that it was all a dream. When he realized that this awakening was quickly spreading, and seemed to be awakening all of his wilted profound veins, even with his frame of mind, he felt a very heavy, heavy sense of surrealness. And this miracle, in 2 hours, had truly emerged within his body. 2 hours later, following after the disappearance of that warm flow of energy in his body, all of his wilted veins had been completely awakened. Although it was still impossible to infuse energy into these veins which were just awakened, nor were they able to support his stamina, this was already a miracle among miracles. And it had even lit up an incomparably bright and glaring hope within him. Yunche heaved a long sigh, and finally opened his eyes. He retracted his arm, and took a step back. Right after, he swiped away the beads of sweat from his forehead. On his fatigued-looking face, he revealed a light smile. Senior Yun, now, are you able to believe this junior's words? Little brother. Looking at Yunche, he felt that foreign sensation all around his body. This was the first time in Yun Qinghong's life that he was unable to say anything out of excitement. Brother Yun, you're really, really too incredible. Yun Xiao's pair of eyes glowed. His fists were clenched, and he was so excited, even his limbs were not listening to his instructions somewhat. Brother Yun, earlier you said that you're able to have my father completely recover in 2 months. Is that true? Yunche nodded. Of course it's true. How? How confident are you? Yun Qinghong hurriedly spoke out right after. Currently, his face had long lost the calm and lightness he had earlier. Yunche said with a slight smile. 100% confident, of course. Senior Yun, don't worry. Since this junior dares to say it, I will definitely make it possible. Earlier, Yun Qinghong would definitely not believe these words from Yunche. However, right now, after personally experiencing the awakening of all the veins in his body, and knowing that it even merely took an incredibly short time of 2 hours, his belief had now far suppressed his suspicion. Yunche picked up a piece of paper from the table, speedily wrote down 2 rows of words, and passed it to Yun Xiao. Your Yun family should have its own medicine storage. According to the amount listed here, go pick out these 14 medicinal ingredients, and bring back at least 109 silver needles which are at least 3 inches long. All right. Currently, Yun Xiao was treating Yunche's words as a royal decree. He speedily glanced through it and realized that all of the ingredients listed were very common medicinal ingredients. Thus, he could not help but ask. Just by using these ingredients, it's possible to heal my father's body. These are not used for Senior Yun, but for you. Yunche said while shifting his eyes over. Your injuries are not light, and earlier, you were overly impulsive. Now that your blood flow is in a mess, if it's not kept under control, I'm afraid it can't be healed even after 2 months. Only the silver needles are used for Senior Yun. The cold poison in Senior Yun's body had already invaded his entire body, and even his vitals have been completely invaded. The regular methods of expelling the poison would all have very huge risks, hence, the only choice is to use silver needles to slowly expel the poison from the various parts of his body. Hurry and go. When Yunche said the words, cold poison, and looked as though he actually had the confidence and method to expel the cold poison, the glow in Yun Qinghong's eyes once again stirred intensely. All right, I'm going now. Yun Xiao jogged out. Just as he reached the door, he once again stopped his steps in an instant and turned around. Oh, right? Mother. Where did Mother go? Since Brother Yun is able to cure Father, then he's definitely able to cure Mother as well. Yun Qinghong said, your uncle came over in the afternoon, so your mother followed him back to the Mu family. She should be back very soon. Ho ho. Yun Qinghong's final light laughter at the end was a laughter filled with ease and comfort. Although his wife's state was similarly severe, it should be a little lighter than his. Since the youth in front of him dared to say that he was 100% confident in healing him completely, then he would naturally be able to treat his wife. Just as Yun Qinghong's words fell, the voice of a rough man suddenly sounded from outside the courtyard. Brother-in-law, we're back. Amen? A guest? When Yun Xiao heard that voice, he turned around and shouted, Mother is back, in a low voice. He did not care about the wounds on his body, and rushed out impatiently with steps as swift as an arrow. Yunche did not follow him out. Instead, his gaze shot past the door that had been pushed open by Yun Xiao, and he looked at the two figures which had just entered the courtyard. His eyes turned hazy and something seemed to be caught in his throat. It was almost as though he had forgotten how to breathe, as his entire body started to gently tremble. Yun Xiao's voice quickly came from outside. "Uncle." "Ah, mother. You're back." As Yun Xiao's voice fell, a woman's gentle yet anxious sounded out. "I heard that you were ambushed outside the city and had even gotten injured. Quick, let mother see. Where are you hurt? Are your injuries serious?" "Eh? Mother, how did you know about my injuries?" A somewhat boorish male voice rang out. The man said evenly, "This old man was helping your mother recuperate, when news suddenly came, saying that you and that girl from the Under-Heaven family were ambushed by someone. This almost scared your mother half to death, so she anxiously rushed back home. Kiddo, let me see to your injuries. Big brother, how are Xiao's injuries? Are they heavy? I heard that the ones who ambushed them were 3 overlords. How could Xiao withstand any blows from them?" The woman's voice trembled heavily and she was obviously beside herself with worry and anxiety. "These wounds are not light, but do not worry, they are all external injuries. As long as he rests for a while, he will make a full recovery." The man's rough voice rang out once more, and it carried with it a slight undertone of suspicion. "Kiddo, who helped to treat your injuries? Such serious external injuries, yet they were suppressed to this level in such a short amount of time." "My injuries are fine." Yun Xiao's heart was filled with joy, and he did not even care about his current state. He said in a hurried voice, "Mother, come quickly. I have some extremely good news for you. Both your injuries and father's injuries can be healed. I met this incredible big brother, and he has a way to help your bodies recover completely. It's true." The voices of the 3 people crept closer and closer. When Yun Xiao's voice fell, they had stepped into the room. Yun Che's gaze regained its clarity at this moment, and his wildly beating heart had been forced into a calm state. He looked at the 2 people who had followed Yun Xiao into the room. The man looked to be roughly around 30 years old. He was tall and broad, and his beard filled his face. He seemed to be a person who was unconcerned with his appearance, but his eyes were as fierce as a wild tiger's. They were forcefully imposing. As his gaze swept across Yun Che, a kind of indescribable pressure suddenly assaulted over. A monarch-level pressure? These supreme existences which had only existed in legends, in just one day, Yun Che had met them one after the other. This didn't mean that the illusory demon realm had numerous super-powerful sovereign profound realm practitioners. This was the demon imperial city, and it was the core of the illusory demon realm, where the peak of its profound world was gathered. And when Yun Che had initially arrived at this place, the people he had met were all from the demon imperial city's most illustrious families. Moreover, they were all peak existences within their respective families. Greatest ambition under heaven was the current patriarch of the elf clan. He was an individual who could cover the sky of the illusory demon realm with one hand. And the tall and broad man in front of him was from the 12 guardian families Mu family, Mu Yubai, the well-known young patriarch of the Mu family, and the future patriarch of the Mu family. He was similarly a supreme existence who could shake the entire illusory demon realm. But what this clearly entailed was that within the short span of a few years, Yun Che had, under the instruction of Jasmine and his own desperation and hard work, begun to close in on the realm of the mightiest existences within both the profound sky continent and the illusory demon realm. Mu Yubai snorted in contempt as he heard Yun Xiao's words, "Allow your father and mother to fully recover? What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Uncle, mother, what I said is completely true. If you do not believe me, ask father." Yun Xiao continued hurriedly. The miracle that had happened to Yun Qinghong caused him such joy that he felt like blood was rushing throughout his entire body. It could be said that in his entire lifetime, he had never been as excited as he was right now. And this is? The woman whom Yun Xiao supported did not seem to hear his words at all. After she entered the room, her gaze fell directly on Yun Che, and did not move at all after that. Yun Che also looked at her, his lips repeatedly closing and opening, yet he did not utter a single word. The years did not leave many marks on her body, but it seemed to have left her with many scars. Anyone could see that in her youth, she had been a peerless beauty. Her appearance was gentle and elegant, her disposition, graceful and noble. Yet her disposition was not so much one of excessive nobility, it was more like she exuded an aura of melancholy. A deeply engraved melancholy that seemed to sit between her brows and in her soul. The melancholy was so deep that it seemed like even 1,000 years would not be enough to clear it away. Even if an insensitive person saw her, he or she would clearly be able to feel her sorrow. Her face showed the same kind of paleness as Yun Qinghong. Even though she could walk, each step showed a noticeable weakness, even her eyes seemed to be covered in with a layer of haziness. Her current state might have been slightly better than Yun Qinghong's, but it was not better by much. She is my birth mother. Mother. Could it be that you are the young man who saved this kid and the under heaven family's girl? Mu Yubai measured Yun Che with his eyes. When he felt his profound strength level, his brows making an obvious movement. Amen. Yun Xiao nodded his head, his expression filled with excitement as he said, "Let me introduce him to you. Mother, uncle, this person is Brother Yun. When seventh sister and I were ambushed by the men in black, he was the one who saved us." Ah. Mother? Mother, are you all right? Why do you keep staring at Brother Yun? Yun Xiao waved his hand in front of Mu Yuro's eyes a couple of times. It was only after this that she recovered from her stupor. After which, she gently laughed, "It's nothing, I am just very grateful. This child seems to feel so close and familiar to me, it is as if I had seen him once very long ago." Yun Che. Ah, so your surname is also Yun. I am Yun Xiao's mother, thank you for saving my Xiao. After saying this, Mu Yuro wanted to raise her body slightly, but Yun Che hurriedly stepped forward. You. Aunt Yun, please do not salute me. When I first saw Yun Xiao, it was like meeting an old friend. Also we have the same surname, and saving him was as simple as lifting a finger. Moreover, we are preparing to become sworn brothers, so please do not salute this junior in any way whatsoever. This, Mu Yuro was slightly startled. Ho ho. Yun Qinghong laughed, and looking at Yun Che, he said, "Yuro, you and I both share this same feeling, like we have seen him somewhere before. Just now, I even said that he looked like me in my youth, or perhaps he really does share some great affinity with our family. Yubai, how did the two of you find out about Xiao being ambushed?" Mu Yubai sternly declared, the precious daughter of the Under Heaven family was almost killed. Greatest ambition under heaven would definitely go wild with anger, so this old man quickly learned about this matter, but unfortunately, Yuro also heard it. HMPH, Mu Yubai's expression became dark. Looks like some people think that they've been living too comfortably, so they're in a hurry to court death. This matter has already drawn my attention, and that old dog from the Under Heaven family is definitely even more focused on it. I believe that it will only be a short while before we ferret out these bastards who are clearly tired of living. I'm just afraid that this current situation is a tad more complicated than what you think it is. Yun Qinghong said while sighing. Mu Yubai's eyes flashed. Brother-in-law, did you perceive something? Let's turn our minds to other things first. Yun Qinghong did not want to continue on this topic. His gaze turned to Yun Che and he said, "Little brother, is it possible for you to examine my wife's condition? If you can cure my wife, this Yun will definitely, in this life." Senior Yun's words are too serious. Yun Che swiftly said, interrupting Yun Qinghong mid-speech, "Yun Xiao and I are as close as brothers. Senior Yun and Aunt Yun are like half my family. This junior will definitely put in all of his effort. As for words of politeness or gratefulness, you really don't need say them." Yeah. Yun Xiao swiftly nodded his head. "Mother, hurry and sit, and let Brother Yun examine you. Brother Yun is extremely skilled in medical arts. Father's dead." Pooh. I mean father's meridians that had been in deep sleep for 20-odd years, Brother Yun woke them all up in less than 2 hours. Right now, father is beginning to regain feeling in various parts of his body. What? Mu Yubai's brows jumped violently. He surged forward and rested his extended hand on top of Yun Qinghong's shoulder. Quickly, the expression on his face became awash with violent emotions. "Big brother, is it true?" Mu Yuro asked excitedly. Mu Yubai released his grip, and slowly nodded his head, saying, "It's true. His previously dead meridians have completely recovered their vitality. Even though they are still relatively weak, as long as he devotes all his attention to becoming well, in no more than a few years, he can make a full recovery. This is practically a miracle. This is true." Mu Yuro's body shook violently, and she was so excited that she nearly fainted on the spot. "Ho ho. Even though this is my own body, even I myself nearly thought that I was dreaming." Yun Qinghong slowly lifted both his hands. Although he had calmed down from his previous excitement long ago, his ruddy face still bore traces of it, as it manifested the great waves in his heart. "Right now I can clearly feel the existence of every single meridian in my body. All of this is thanks to the efforts of Brother Yun." Yun Xiao declared with great enthusiasm. Brother Yun even said that he is confident that he can help Father recover not only physically, but also help him recover his profound strength, all within the span of 2 months. Complete recovery? Mu Yubai gaze shot towards Yun Che, and he started to appraise him yet again. "Did you really say such a thing?" "Yes." Yun Che nodded his head. Mu Yubai furrowed his brows as his gaze turned grave. "You used a mere 2 hours to help a completely crippled person's veins make a full recovery, so you do needed have godly skills. In the 200 years that I've lived thus far, I have not heard of such a thing before. But, before I question your medical ability, let me explain that what he suffered from was not a simple injury, it was a complete crippling due to him overdrawing on his own strength. Besides his meridians being crippled, his profound veins and internal organs are all on the brink of failure. Moreover, there is still an extremely terrifying and uncleansable cold poison in his system. Do you really have the ability to help him make a full recovery? And even help him recover his strength?" Yun Che looked straight at him, his expression calm as he answered, "Doctors do not tell lies. I can resurrect Senior Yuns from the grave in 2 hours. I also have the confidence that within 7 days, I can help them fully recover. I will be able to completely cleanse the cold poison in Senior Yun's body, in the following 3 days, with not a single trace remaining. As for the failure of his profound veins and 5 viscera, even though it is troublesome, I have confidence that I can help Senior Yun make a full recovery within 1 month. Give me another month, and I can help Senior Yun regain all his profound strength." Mu Yubai. The more this junior speaks, the harder it will be for Senior Mu to be convinced. In 2 months' time, everyone will naturally witness the results. Yun Che declared with determination. The gaze which Mu Yubai used to regard Yun Che grew more and more concentrated, while his heart was in a constant state of upheaval. The young man standing before him was only at the sky-profound realm, but under his imposing manner and his gaze did not waver, nor did his face change color. Both his eyes were clear as clean water, he could not even detect a hint of falseness or inadequacy. Moreover, every word he said, to the ears of those who was familiar with Yun Qinghong's condition, sounded too fantastic to be true. But somehow, they possessed the ability to cause people to unwittingly believe. "Good." Mu Yubai nodded his head. "If you can really do as you have said, and cure my little sister and brother-in-law, then at that time, whatever request you make of me, even if you want me give my life for you, I won't even furrow a brow." This was the young patriarch of the Mu family, yet he actually vowed to give his life to another. Yun Che was absolutely the first and only person he had ever made this vow to before. And this undoubtedly showed his deep concern for Mu Yuro. Yun Che looked at him with a few more degrees of respect. A kind of instinctive respect. "This junior only has one tiny request," Yun Che said, "in regards to the healing of Senior Yun and Aunt Yun. Before I have succeeded, please do not speak of this to anyone." "Oh? Why?" Yun Xiao said in confusion, but he immediately saw that both Yun Qinghong and Mu Yuro did not express any suspicion or surprise. Instead, both of them looked deep in thought. Yun Che continued, "Even though this is Junior's first time coming to Demon Imperial City, after hearing about some things concerning the Yun family and the 12 guardian families from Yun Xiao, then witnessing the attack against Yun Xiao and number 7 under heaven, I can faintly guess a few things. Coupled with the fact that in 3 months' time, it will the Little Demon Empress 100-year reign ceremony, and that the Yun family clan competition will be held in 2 months. During this period, there won't be any peace within the Yun family, and there will also be an undercurrent of unlawful elements abounding as well. If this junior's ability to heal both Senior Yun and Aunt Yun is leaked outside, forgive this junior for speaking frankly, what may come from the rest of the Yun family might very well not be delight. And in 2 months' time, if Senior Yun and Aunt Yun still present themselves as cripples at the family competition, you might perhaps be able to unearth even more truths. Yun Qinghong and Mu Yubai stayed silent for a short period of time. Then, Mu Yubai nodded his head and said, "You are correct. This matter definitely cannot be discovered by anyone else. On my side, I will only tell this to my father, to raise his spirits. Xiao, always bear this in mind. You definitely cannot let anyone else know of this matter. Do not reveal even a trace of information. Even if that girl from the Under Heaven family who has got you wrapped around her little finger comes calling, you are not to reveal anything at all. Do you understand?" "I understand. I definitely won't tell anyone else." Yun Xiao nodded his head vigorously. Even though he did not fully understand Yun Che's words, he knew what was important and what was not, and he also knew what he should and should not do, so he was very clear about this. "Kid, is this really your first time coming to the Demon Imperial City?" Mu Yubai stared at Yun Che as he spoke. "It's my first time. In fact, this very day is my first day within the Demon Imperial City," Yun Che said with extreme steadfastness. Not a single one of the words he spoke was a lie. "Kid, you're not simple," Mu Yubai said seriously. "The words that I have said to you just now, I definitely won't go back on them. If you can really completely heal them both, not only this family, but even I, Mu Yubai, will owe you half my life." Yun Qinghong lightly nodded. He was exceedingly clear on the kind of shocking appraisal that would actually cause the words, "not simple," to come out from Mu Yubai's mouth. Yun Che nodded his head, after which he turned to Mu Yuro. "Yun Xiao, bring Aunt Yun over here. I will help her awaken her meridians first." Mu Yubai's eyes suddenly flashed, while Yun Qinghong gently said, "Just now, your act of awakening my meridians have already caused you to be drenched in sweat, and it must have consumed a lot of your strength. I think it would be better if you had a rest first." "No need." Yun Che shook his head, "because we must first unblock the veins before we can begin to cleanse the cold poison. Every breath the poison remains within the body increases the damage it does and the danger it poses. Senior Yun might have suffered more severe bodily harm than Aunt Yun, but Aunt Yun's constitution is slightly weaker than Senior Yun. If Senior Yun's condition is left unattended, he can still endure for roughly another 3 years. But even though Aunt Yun can walk, the cold poison in her body can completely invade her life vein at any time. This also means that there is a chance the cold poison in her body could completely flare up at any time. Therefore, we cannot wait even another second." Yun Che did indeed wear himself out in order to treat Yun Qinghong earlier, but he had no exaggerated in the slightest about Mu Yuro's condition. So even though he was dead tired, he would definitely not allow any more delays to occur, because she was his birth mother. Ah! Yun Che's words frightened Yun Xiao greatly. He had never thought that his parents' conditions had worsened to this degree. His voice practically shivered as he asked, Is this really true?" He himself was the most clear on the current status of his body, so after hearing what Yun Che had said, Yun Qinghong's confidence in him suddenly rose by several degrees. He lightly said, "If that is the case, then we will have to trouble you." Yun Xiao helped Mu Yuro sit down. Yun Che stood in front of Mu Yuro, and his palms gently pressed down on the pit of her stomach. There was only a distance of half a step between the both of them, and Mu Yuro's gaze was very close. And it was only this gaze that Yun Che did not dare meet, because he was afraid that the gentleness of that gaze would cause him to lose control there and then. In the past, he was very certain that he was completely indifferent to blood ties which did not exist at first. Even if he met his birth parents, it would not cause a single ripple in his heart. But after seeing Yun Qinghong, and meeting Mu Yuro, he knew then that he was wrong, and what a great wrong it was. Or perhaps it was better to say that the bond of blood was not something that could be controlled by willpower or fear. "Child, I have troubled you. Please do not feel too much pressure. Even if you cannot heal me, we will forever be grateful to you. Muyuro said in a gentle voice. She viewed the man in front of her up close, and she found that it was hard for her to draw her gaze away from him. A strange feeling caused her heart to beat chaotically. It was only that she could not figure out the reason for such a bizarre feeling. Yunche nodded his head lightly. After that, the great way of the Buddha was completely active and he regulated his profound energy control until it was at its most gentle state. He used this profound energy to slowly and gently infuse the energy of heaven and earth into Muyuro's body. Muyubai's eyes opened wide, and he stared unblinkingly at Yunche's movements and expression. Once Muyuro's veins had been fully awoken, her body started to transmit signals of pain to her, and this caused the young patriarch of the Mu family, who could shake the entire illusory demon realm, to jump up and down excitedly like a little kid. He started to circle Yunche and Muyuro excitedly while his two hands rubbed together so vigorously that they almost generated sparks. Seeing the result and witnessing the process was naturally two completely different matters altogether. Muyubai viewed Yunche with passion, but also as if he was some kind of monster. Yun Qinghong was extremely quiet throughout the process. The expression in his eyes switched from joy to wonder and back again. At the same time, he also mutely gazed at Yunche as he sank into deep thought. This time Yunche only used 1 hour to successfully clear all of Muyuro's veins. After he had accomplished his mission, he swayed once, then collapsed to sit on the floor, with his entire body soaked in sweat. "Brother Yun." Yun Xiao rushed over to support him. "Yun Xiao, help me arrange for a quiet room." Senior Yun, Aunt Yun, Senior Mu, this junior has slightly exceeded the limits of his endurance, so I will have to excuse myself first. After he had finished speaking, the scenery in front of him became a blur, and he could not hear a single sound. Soon after, he descended into a deep sleep. In the state where his mind was relaxed, he only wanted to have a good sleep. If he was in another place, even if he was not surrounded by enemies, he would never allow himself to descend into such deep slumber. But the ones around him, even though he had only known all of them for a day, were all people who had true blood ties to him. The indescribable bonds established by blood was not something he could defend against, or was willing to defend against with his great willpower. It would not be exaggerated in the least to state that below the divine profound realm, Yunche's recovery rate had no equal. When Yunche awoke, the sky had already turned dark, and he had roughly recovered all the mental and profound strength he had exhausted. After he woke up, he realized that he was lying on a small, fluffy bed. The surroundings were quiet and the room's furnishing was simple yet elegant. He directed his gaze outside the window. Yunche could tell with a glance that he was no longer in Yun Qinghong's small courtyard, but he should be in one of the guest rooms that were to the side of the main hall. Yunche perked up his ears and he could faintly make out the conversation that Yun Qinghong and Muyuro were having on the other side of the wall. In order not to disturb his rest, the voices of the two were very quiet. Yunche jumped off the bed and quickly organized his thoughts. After that, he picked up his sound transmission jade and located the sound transmission imprint left behind by number 1 under heaven. "Brother under heaven, there is one matter in which I require your help for." Yunche sent out his message via sound transmission. In a few moments, the sound transmission jade shone with a flash of profound light, the revolving profound formation emitting number 1 under heaven's good-humored voice. "Brother Yun, you just need to say what you want and it will be done." Yunche said in a very frank and matter-of-fact tone, "In 2 months' time, the Yun family, in order to prepare for the Demon Empress Grand Ceremony that is coming in 3 months, will be holding a family competition, and at that time, I hope that Brother under heaven can also be present. As for the reason why, please forgive me for not being able to say it right now, but all will be revealed to Brother under heaven at that time." Without letting Yunche wait for too long, number 1 under heaven's voice transmitted over once again, "You do not need to explain the reasons to me, because in comparison to the fact that Brother Yun saved my little sister's life, this small matter is not even worth mentioning. When the time comes, I will be there. I definitely won't go back on my words." Number 1 under heaven was an extremely straightforward person, so the entire process was much smoother than Yunche had predicted. After all, he did save number 7 under heaven's life. And because number one under heaven had a naturally proud personality, he was not willing to owe anyone favors. To top it all off, this arrangement had already been made previously, so even if Yunche did not explain himself, he would absolutely not reject Yunche. The door was pushed open as Yun Xiao, who had heard the sound of voices, hurriedly rushed into the room. Looking at Yunche, he joyfully cried, "Brother Yun, you're awake." Amen. Yunche nodded his head. "Yun Xiao, it's good that you have come. Because now we can begin the ceremony." "Eh? Ceremony?" Yunche grabbed Yun Xiao and hauled him down into a kneeling position. After which, he pointed his fingers towards the sky and he began speaking methodically. "I, Yunche, from this day forward will become sworn brothers with Yun Xiao. I will be the elder, Yun Xiao the younger. And from this day forward we will share both our joys and sorrows. Yun Xiao's relatives will be my own, and my relatives will be Yun Xiao's own as well. These words have been witnessed under the blue sky. If any of us violate them, may he be damned by both heaven and earth." Yun Xiao knelt there, dazed, and he had not regained his sense yet. After Yunche had said his vows, he patted him on the shoulder. "All right, now it is your turn." Yun Xiao turned his head, and his face was filled with bewilderment. He moved his lips and hurriedly said, "Brother Yun, I? Why? You don't want to be sworn brothers with me?" Yunche asked with a laugh. "No, of course not." Yun Xiao shook his head, then he stared straight at Yunche and said with sincerity, "Brother Yun's talents reach the heavens and your medical expertise has reached a point where it startles everyone. Moreover, you have done so many things for me and my parents, but even though I am the Yun family's young patriarch in name, you saw my true status today. I have only known you for a day, yet your light is so dazzling that I do not even dare to gaze upon it directly. In front of Brother Yun, I am practically a firefly to your bright moon. I don't understand why Brother Yun would be willing to become sworn brothers with me. And not only that, you even took the initiative." Yun Xiao's temperament was warm and he always did things in a manner that was tolerant and circumspect, but he definitely was no fool. So Yunche would definitely not blame Yun Xiao for having suspicions about him. He looked at Yun Xiao and said in an even more sincere tone, "Yun Xiao, for you to have such suspicions is absolutely normal. And the misgivings your parents have towards me are definitely even greater than your own. Indeed, there is no such thing as free lunch in this world, and no benefits are given for no reason at all. It is the same with me as well. But Yun Xiao, please believe me. I do not have any schemes hatched against you or your family, nor do I have any ill intentions towards all of you. I will never bear any malice towards any of you, not now or ever. I sincerely want to become a real brother to you, and I am even more sincere in my desire to have your family become my own as well. As for the reason for all of this, I cannot divulge that at the present moment, but give me at most 6 months, and I will clearly explain all my motivations to you. If any of the words I have said to you are false, then may I die a dog's death." "Ah." Yun Xiao heard the curse Yunche directed at himself and it frightened him tremendously. If he still had some suspicions before, the resolute and decisive words uttered by Yunche and his resolute sincere eyes had completely wiped it away, causing Yun Xiao to not be able to manifest even a shred of ill feeling or guard against Yunche. He nodded his head and faced forward, raising his fingers to the sky. He uttered the exact same words that Yunche did. "I, Yun Xiao, from this day forward will become sworn brothers with Brother Yunche. Brother Yun will be the elder, I the younger. And from this day forward we will share both our joys and sorrows. Brother Yun's relatives will be my own, and my relatives will be Brother Yun's own as well. These words have been witnessed under the blue sky. If any of us violate them, may he be damned by both heaven and earth." Yun Xiao's feelings were way more agitated than Yunche. Yunche had told him there was really a reason for all of this, but what had given him much more clarity was Yunche's heartfelt sincerity. Moreover, there was also the urgency and concern with which he treated Mu Yuro's condition when he helped her clear her veins, to the point where he finally fainted because he had exhausted his mental strength beyond his limits. Even though he did not understand the reasons behind it, at the moment, he was extremely convinced that Yunche would not hurt him or his family. Or maybe he was really a divine being sent by the heavens to save his family. Younger brother Yun Xiao greets elder brother. Yun Xiao knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yun Che in a sincere and moved manner. Yun Che accepted his kowtow, then lifted him up. After Yun Xiao got up, both of them laughed and nodded their heads. Yun Che said, "From now onwards we will be just like blood brothers. No matter what happens from now on, we will mutually rely on one another and no one is allowed to hold back." Good. Hee hee. I have a big brother now, and what a powerful big brother he is. It's as if I'm dreaming. Yun Xiao's face was red. It was still suffused with excitement. "It's only that I am really not up to the mark to be your younger brother. I don't know how much more I will owe big brother from now on." "Ha ha, since we are already brothers, don't say such cold things." Yun Che gave off a hearty laugh as he looked at Yun Xiao's emotional appearance. He sighed in his heart and thought, "Yun Xiao, you may think that you are the one who owes me. But the people I saved are my very own birth parents, whereas your birth parents, along with your grandmother, died because of me. Your grandfather had to endure intense pain akin to his flesh being torn apart as he raised me under the most bitter of circumstances. Your little aunt became my most gentle spiritual support in my youth. And even you had to bear such humiliation and indifference for 22 years. All because of me. If you want to talk about owing someone, it is I who owe you. What I owe your family can never ever be repaid. The only thing I can do is to make sure that you are no longer bullied or humiliated and to allow you, grandfather and little aunt to reunite, while also finding the true culprit behind my foster father's death. And that is all I can really do. Let's go, your parents' meridians have already been unobstructed, so we can begin the process of ridding their bodies of the cold poison," Yun Che said as he strode towards the door. "Ah? Now?" Yun Xiao said worriedly, "But big brother, you just fainted from overexhaustion and you have only just awakened. What if you get hurt due to exhaustion? Why don't you rest first and then begin again tomorrow? There's no hurry really. Do I look exhausted to you?" Yun Che stretched and twisted his neck, then sternly declared, "I already said this, but your parents are now my parents as well. And seeing that your mother's condition is already precarious, even if you are willing to wait until tomorrow, I am not. Let's go." "Ah. Okay." Both of them pushed open the door of the main hall together and strode in side by side. They saw Yun Qinghong and Mu Yuro sitting there, smiling at the both of them. Yun Xiao wore a slightly embarrassed expression and said with a small laugh, "Father, mother, did you hear everything big brother and I said a while ago? The only thing that separated the two rooms was a wall that was not thick at all. Moreover, the volume they used just now was not soft, so even if it was a normal person, he or she could have heard everything clearly. Ho ho, we did not miss a single word." Yun Qinghong said as he laughed gently, "Xiao, congratulations on gaining such a fine older brother. Even I can feel that Yun Che has not even a single iota of ill intent towards our family. And as for the so-called reason, it actually isn't even important anymore." Mu Yuro's eyes were watery as she said softly, "Husband, since they have already become sworn brothers, what say we accept this child as our foster son?" Yun Qinghong laughed heartily. "If we could have such an illustrious and exceptional son, it would of course be perfect. But as to this, why don't we see what Yun Che has to say first?" Yun Che's chest swelled up violently. He took a step forward and immediately kneeled on the ground. "Your child Yun Che greets foster father and foster mother." Mu Yuro and Yun Qinghong shared a glance as a joyous and delighted smile appeared on both their faces. Yun Qinghong clasped both his hands lightly and he sighed in a clearly emotional manner, "Good. Good. I, Yun Qinghong, have resented the heavens for these past few decades. But today can be counted as some compensation towards our family, to allow us to have yet another son. Child, stand up, the floor is cold." Mu Yuro stood up and gently raised Yun Che up. Looking at her warm gaze which seemed to melt everything, Yun Che nearly lost control of himself and said in an emotional voice, "Can I not address you as foster father and foster mother, and call you father and mother instead, like Yun Xiao?" Once he had said those words, Yun Che immediately regretted it. It was merely a day, but he had become sworn brothers with Yun Xiao and recognized them as foster parents. These actions in and of themselves were way too impulsive. And these words he had just uttered were impulsive beyond belief. He hurriedly explained, since a young age, my birth parents had left me. And the foster parents who had taken me in soon left the world not long after I had been born. I was too young to even remember their faces, and it was always grandfather who had raised me into adulthood. So I don't even know the feeling of being able to call someone father or mother, so. Yunche's words inadvertently pierced Muyuro's heart. Her eyes instantly became hazy as she answered, "You are truly such a pitiful child. Chea, as long as you don't mind, we will be your father and mother from now on. And we will love and cherish you as though you are our very own. You can call us whatever you like." Yun Qinghong also lightly nodded his head. Yun Che's heart violently jumped and he knelt down once again. He gazed at them as he shouted softly, "Father! Mother!" Even though he tried his best to control his voice, when he called out those two words, they still carried a heavy tremble. This was the first time in both of his lives, the first time he was yelling out these two words which were beyond familiar to most people. Moreover, the ones he were addressing them to were his very own birth parents. I am finally someone who also has parents now. Yun Che closed his eyes, basking in the feeling of being able to greet his parents. At this moment, he felt like his life had instantly gotten closer to completion, and the hole that had always quietly existed in his heart, the feeling that he was lacked something, vanished as well. It was also in this moment that he truly understood what it was that he lacked all this while. Episode 88 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.